Rain slicked the field at Middlemoor Water Park. A crowd gathered. A medieval war machine stood, repurposed for thrill seekers. They called it the human Trebuchet. What was supposed to be a moment of weightless freedom became a fatal miscalculation. One arc through the air that went wrong, and a silence that never really left the ground. In this video, we're diving into the true story of the stunt that turned spectacle into tragedy. The horrifying moment when the thin line between engineered thrill and irreversible consequence was crossed. This is Horrible Fates, the human Trebuchet tragedy. November 24th, 2002. The field at Middlemoor Water Park was slick with a light November rain, the kind that never commits to falling hard, but soaks you to the bone anyways. It was the wettest November on record since 1940 for that part of Somerset. The dampness clung to jackets, to hair, to the muddy cuffs of jeans. The air itself smelled of wet grass and rusted metal, and somewhere beyond the trees, a generator coughed and whined as it kicked on to power floodlights that would eventually turn the evening into a pale imitation of daylight. In the middle of it all stood a machine, towering over the flat, sodden landscape like a man-made dare carved out of timber and steel. It was a 60-foot wooden behemoth of medieval architecture, a human Trebuchet. It was a monstrous thing, beams bolted together, a counterweight the size of a small car, ropes threaded through pulleys that creaked when the wind nudged them, medieval in silhouette, modern in arrogance. Someone had laughed at first glance and said it looked like a prop from a history film. Someone else had said it looked safe enough. The crowd that gathered wanted to believe the second person far more than the first. See, this wasn't a historical reenactment or a museum piece. It was a device built for a singular, terrifying purpose: to hurl a human being through the sky. People had paid for this moment. Not much, just enough to feel like they were bargaining with danger itself. A harness, a quick explanation, a promise of a net waiting on the other side of the flight. You would be flung into the air, weightless for a heartbeat, and then caught in a net the size of a tennis court. Clean, dramatic, cinematic. A story to take home and tell for the rest of your life. A bruise at most, a video to pass around later. So what is a trebuchet? A trebuchet is a powerful medieval siege engine, a type of catapult that uses a counterweight and a hinged arm with a sling to hurl heavy projectiles. The device itself was primarily used between the 12th and 15th centuries, and it was designed to smash castle walls and fortifications before the advent of gunpowder. The device was a favorite of the Romans, as they would hurl rocks and plague-ridden bodies over the castle walls of their enemies. Now, most of the approximately 30 onlookers who gathered on that day belonged to the Oxford Stunt Factory, a private extreme sports club. The club's head, David Ding Boston, had organized a caravan for their arrival. While the majority of the spectators were there to watch, a select handful, including an enthusiastic 19-year-old freshman biochemistry student from Bulgaria named Kostadin Dino Yankov, were determined to take part in the event. 19-year-old Kostadin Yankov, better known as Dino, was a Wadham College biochemistry undergraduate. Dino was extremely enthusiastic about taking his chances on the medieval device, and as he and others waited eagerly, things soon began. The first jumper, Paul Capsey, explained that there was a safety procedure in place. Each jumper was weighed while wearing safety equipment, and a corresponding test weight was fired to check for any problems. Paul's test weight was deemed a success, and it was now his turn to kick things off. 3, 2, 1. The machine let out a snapping sound as Paul's body was hurled into the air. It only took a few seconds before Paul's body landed inside the safety net. All had gone exactly as it was supposed to. It would take roughly 30 minutes before the next person was ready to go. One after another, bodies flew through the sky and landed inside the large safety net. After a few hours of this, it was now Dino's turn to go. Safety gear was strapped on. The test weight was a success. Dino was loaded into the machine. The operators checked the knots. Once, maybe twice. The crowd of people leaned in, and phones came out. "Ready?" someone called, and he nodded. 3, 2, 1. The release came, not with a dramatic snap, but with a sound like something heavy exhaling. For a split second, it was beautiful. He lifted from the cradle in a clean arc, the light rain trailing from his shoes like sparks. The crowd gasped, that unified intake of breath people make when they witness something risky but elegant. And for that single moment, the world held him aloft. Then, it happened. He missed the net. It was subtle, the way disaster always is at first. Not a sudden, obvious failure, but a quiet betrayal of angles and force. The net was where it had always been, stretched and waiting. The impact was a sound that didn't belong in a place of cheering. The thud itself sounded final. It cut through the rain and generator noise and landed in the middle of every chest there. The laughter evaporated instantly. Phones lowered. No one knew what to do with their hands. For a moment, no one moved a muscle. People forgot to breathe. It wasn't denial, so much as the human tendency to wait for the world to correct itself, for the man to get up, to wave, to turn the catastrophe back into a story that could be laughed about later. But in this instance, the world did not correct itself. People ran. Boots slipped in the mud. Someone fell to their knees beside him. The emergency services arrived to a scene that was already quiet. Gerard Pickard, a West Country ambulance paramedic, later spoke about what he had witnessed. Dino's injuries were beyond horrific. He had landed on his buttocks and hit the ground with tremendous force. The injuries to his higher legs and lower spine were visceral. Dino knew in that moment just how seriously injured he was. Outside the guttural moans of pain, all he could say to the paramedic was, "I'm going to die. I'm going to die." A helicopter soon arrived on scene and rushed Yankov to a hospital in Bristol. Doctors did all they could for the young man, but Dino had been thrown several stories high and over 100 feet towards the net. No worn safety gear could have stopped the catastrophic damage to his body. And at 7:30 p.m. that evening, he was pronounced deceased. In the aftermath, people were outraged over what had happened, and the legal fallout was swift. The organizers, Richard Wicks and David Aikenhead, were eventually charged with manslaughter. The prosecution argued that the human trebuchet was an inherently unstable experiment, a clumsy machine that lacked the precision required for human life. Yankov had signed a release, and he was fully aware of the dangers that could come to him while participating in such a dangerous stunt. The two men eventually stood trial for manslaughter at the Bristol Crown Court, and in the end, the judge cleared them of all wrongdoing because of a lack of evidence. See, nothing had gone wrong with the device, and no one was to blame for making a mistake. This was just an inherent tragedy in every way. The tragedy of Kostadin Yankov didn't come from malice. It came from optimism without safeguards, from the belief that spectacle is worth the risk, and that engineering ambition can substitute for responsibility. What happened at Middlemoor Water Park forces an uncomfortable question. How often do we mistake calculated risk for acceptable risk? Because the line between innovation and recklessness is thin, and when it's crossed, the cost is never abstract. It's personal. It's final. So the next time we're drawn to the thrill of something extreme, it's worth asking, not just, is this possible, but who bears the consequences if it goes wrong? That question lingers long after the spectacle of it all fades. In the end, I want to send my deepest condolences to all the family and friends of Kostadin Dino Ilyev Yankov. If you made it this far, thank you for watching today's video. When I started this channel, I never thought I'd hit almost 40,000 subscribers, so to all of you that have subscribed and supported me on this journey, well, I can't thank you enough. Also, a big shout out to my channel members. Your support means the world to me, and if you'd like to become a channel member, you can join for only a few dollars a month. You get access to some videos early, as well as a back catalog of some of my earliest content, and you get your name listed in the end credits of each of my videos. Now, before you leave, please subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button, and leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought of today's video, and if you have a story idea, please feel free to share that as well. Also, a screen will pop up shortly recommending some of my other videos, and I highly encourage you to check one of them out. With all that said, I hope to see each and every one of you again next time when we head back into the cellar.